Hi there, my name is Ros Cuthbert. I'm a co-director of the Art Shed Winscombe, which is in southwest England. And we run classes in painting and drawing. And at the moment we're running online classes, which you can catch up with on our Facebook page. And what I want to do today is I want to show you how you might approach the subject of waves splashing on rocks in watercolour. And I'm going to use masking fluid, of course, and I'm going to use candle wax, and also I'm going to use a stencil. So if you'd like to follow me over to the demonstration table. So I've got a nice stretched up sheet of Bockingford watercolour paper, which has a cold press, a slightly textured surface. And ordinarily I would get my subject matter, my photographic subject matter, or if I was sitting out there, of course, I'd be sketching from life. But failing that, in lockdown, here we are working from photos. So I planned it a little bit, and I'm going to use a stencil to start with, because I want to preserve the sharp contour of the rock here, and maybe have this area here covered with masking fluid spray. So to begin with, I'm going to cut out my stencil. Now there's my stencil, and I'm going to place that somewhere here, I think, and then perhaps a little bit of a horizon line somewhere here. Let's hint at that with a little straight edge there. And before I do anything with the masking fluid, I'm going to take a little bit of candle, cheap candlestick, and I'm going to imitate the movement of water, shallow water, swashing around the front of the rock here. So here's the shape. Let's draw around it. Something like that. And that's out of the way. And now I can see where I want my swirling shallows in the foreground. So I've got two photographs here, and I rather like the swirling nature of the water in this one, and also the fact that it's running back off this rock here. And the other one is more turbulent water with a bigger sea behind. So I'm going to combine those two. So first of all, I'm just going to kind of let my arm imitate the incredible dancing mobility of the water here in the foreground. So something like that. And the pressure I'm using is quite a firm pressure, but I'm varying it. I'm not keeping the same pressure. So I'm trying to use it in a dancing kind of way on the surface. Yeah, I might even add a little bit up here, perhaps some wave in the distance, some waves further back. So that might be all I want to do with the candle wax. I think now we can move straight on to using our stencil and the masking fluid. So let's get these out of the way. And choose a nice stiff old brush that I don't mind if it gets bunged up with the masking fluid. I need that nice spring. This is a very, very ancient brush, so the masking fluid will tend to, if it dries on a brush, you won't be able to use that brush again. So don't use a new one, don't use a nice one. Use something that you don't mind possibly spoiling. Old toothbrushes are great. And takes a moment or two to get this texture nice and solid, nice and rich. A nice lot of fluid up here where the wave is really flying high up into the air. As it pulls back from the rock. And along here a little bit, maybe a little. And then take the stencil away and just let me go along this edge. Just soften that bit there. If you want it a little bit more solid, you can always take the brush and encourage a more solid texture with the brush or even with your finger. There we go. So, okay. Now that brush, let me see if I put it straight into water. So I've got one or two other implements that I like to use with masking fluid, and maybe first of all I'll show you this one, which is a mapping pen, and it's not a usual shape for a pen. It's a little bit like a bird's beak, and these two prongs can be moved closer together or wider apart. There's a gap at the top by this little wheel, so get that little gap as narrow as I want it. And looking at my other photograph where the water's pulling back off the rocks here, I'm going to see if I can get something like that in the foreground here of my rock. Using this mapping pen. Another thing you could use is you can buy brushes which are specially designed for use with masking fluid. As I say, if you use a brush ordinarily, it doesn't recover, so don't use your best sables or anything like that with this stuff. So that might give me a little bit of a sense of the splash back there. I'm also going to use my other favourite tool, which is one of these colour shaker brushes, which is a solid rubber or probably soft plastic tipped brush, which has been cut. You can get different profiles. This one's got a couple of flat edges and a point, so it's quite versatile. And it's solid, so I don't need to worry about it clogging. And I'm just going to now work in the texture of this sea in the foreground as quickly as I can. So I'm rolling this brush around and getting different kind of active shapes out of it as I go. I'm using the masking fluid like as if it were paint. I'm imagining I am painting with it actually. It's not just a stop out. It's not just something which is going to let me paint with the paint. It's going to actually have a huge effect on the paint itself. And I've put some washes over this. So I'm rolling it around, and I'm not letting my eye stray very far from the photograph. I'm looking at that movement of the water and trying to make my hand dance in that way. This is a different quality of movement here, but some which may come in handy further back where I want a sense of depth in the picture space. Maybe I want a flattening of the sea, a slight flattening as the waves may come more into the distance. So, yeah, solid waves splashing here. And possibly here. If masking fluid splashes somewhere where you don't want it, it isn't a disaster. You can, when it's dry, just rub it off those places. I'm going to make that more solid just here, so that comes out pure white. Maybe just make it a little bit more over there. Okay. Right. Now the next thing is to use my hairdryer on that. So I'll just stop the video or pause it for a moment while I'm doing that, and then I'll get back to you. Okay. So that took up a couple of minutes to dry, and there's quite a lot of splashing of masking fluid all over these areas. So where I don't want it, I can just remove it with my finger and create a bit more of a contour to the shape of the wave. So I don't want to over tidy it, but I don't want to have too much in the way of random marks splashing too far out, perhaps. And I can control that contour a little bit in this way. Okay. Perhaps also on the rock itself, a little bit of splash there. Just get rid of that bit there. Right. So I think the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to get my paints out and I'm going to mix some colour. Right. So here's my palette. I've got a nice big fat round number 16 brush, and I'm going to mix a colour. First of all, I think this sky. So let's see. It wants to be quite a warm, perhaps ultramarine. Touch of ultramarine and yes. I'm going to add just a tiny little bit of alizarin crimson, so gives it a sort of sultry, mauvey quality. Let's see that. There we go. Let's just move the border a little bit of this. What I want to do is try to get this line here as clean as I can. The edge of the horizon. This is quite a rich mix, this. Okay, I can always tint it one or two ways if I want to. So I'm going to take it straight through here, and the masking fluid will do its job. Straight enough. And it's just, yes, okay. So while I'm at it, I could lift a little bit out of the sky here with a bit of tissue and create some movement in the in that sky. Okay, just a little bit, I think. Now, obviously that has got to dry a little bit before I can put the ocean in, but it probably will by the time I've mixed my colour. I think I'll do that here. So I'm going to use ultramarine again, which will give me a dusky kind of sea green if I mix some turquoise with it. Yeah, nice dusky mixture of indigo, ultramarine and turquoise will give me a very nice dusky green. But before I use that, I'm going to also mix a slightly lighter green with turquoise and ultramarine. So I've got 2 shades. Let's see how we get on. Just try that out on my, yeah, that'll be okay. Right. So I'm going to just load my brush with the first colour, and I'm going to take it along the back of the painting, the back of the ocean. Tip of my brush against the sky, and I'm going to coax it over this anyway because there will be some spaces. It looks quite solid, but actually it's less solid than it looks. And all those little gaps will want a nice rich mixture of pigment so that they can, the white that's left can really glow, get some energy out of the combination. Right. So as I come forward, let's see. Yeah, there's that little bit of candle wax that I put on earlier. And we can leave a little bit of dry brush, which is where the paint doesn't quite cover. That's dry brush. And around here, just going to softly dribble some pigment over that. Make sure that sea is, continuity of the colour of the sea is going to carry across. Just get the other colour on my brush now and bring it down more into the nearer water. Okay, I think that will be enough. because what I'm going to do now is thin it quite a bit. In fact, I'm going to take what I've got on the brush and add a little water to that. I'm going to try that out in the foreground. Okay. Let's see how that does. I also think what I want to do is warm the colour up a bit. And I could do that with a hint of alizarin crimson, make it a more mauvey colour. I could do it with a little bit of earth red, which would suggest rocks closer to the surface. So those colours together might do that for me. Let's see, just try to cover all the bare bits of paper which are kind of there between the masking fluid marks and the candle wax marks. So, okay, so let's see if we want a little bit more of these smoky watercolours, tints in the foreground, and perhaps an additional hint of shadow where that wave is breaking. Let's try that. Okay, so I haven't completely gone over where the masking fluid's going round here. And the reason for that is that the wave is really solid, but there is light and shade on the wave itself. And I think that if I do that with a colour that's going to suggest the light and shade of the wave rather than the colour of the sea, let me see, probably if I use one of these remnants of sea colour and just warm it up a little bit so it's a warm grey, make sure it's a really, really thin version of itself. Yeah, that's a really thin version of itself. Okay, so let's see if that's going to work. So I'm just going to put that over the remainder of the area which is covered in masking fluid. Right, I think I've got it pretty much all covered now. So I think the next thing is going to be painting the rock, which I can't do until the rest of it is dry. So I will just pause again. Okay, so that took about 5 minutes to dry that thoroughly. And now it's time to paint the rock. And I think I'm going to start with some raw umber. So I'm getting my raw umber out of the pan here. I want plenty of pigment because I want a nice rich colour. And I'm also going to mix Payne's Grey, shadowy wet rock colour, which I'm going to combine indigo with Payne's Grey. Right, let's see where that gets me. So first of all, I'm getting this brush going on the last remaining unpainted section. Taking it around the contour. Over that area. Splashback there. And over these little parts of masking fluid where hopefully it'll look as if the water's draining back from the last wave. Okay, so ideally I should dry that, but I think I'm going to go straight into it, wet into wet, and give myself a sense of the wetness of the subject in the way that this paint is used. I'm using it in the spirit of wet rock covered in salt water. Right, so again, I am looking at the photo, which is out of your view here, but I'm looking at the patterns of the rock and trying to get my brush to flow in response. So capturing the spirit more than the letter of what I'm looking at. Obviously, you want it to look convincing. So, the rock's covered in cracks and deep fissures, which no doubt endless waves have caused. And a bit of a sense of rock under the water there as well. Do that here. Right. If I wanted any more sharp detail on that rock, now would be the moment when I would dry it and then add detail. So I'm just going to quickly dry this. Driving that moisture off, and just dab that area there. And while the rest of that is drying, I'm going to just start with clean fingers, coaxing off the masking fluid. This is almost the last stage. So I'm coaxing it off delicately, rubbing gently round and round to lift the masking fluid without tearing paper. There's quite a lot of masking fluid on this painting, so I'll do this gently and cautiously, and in a gentle circular motion, not too much pressure, just loosening it and then removing as I go. So what this will do is this will disclose a lot of white paper, and much of that white paper will stay, of course, but some of it may want a little extra treatment. So we'll come to that in a minute. I'm going to stop the video again and take off the masking fluid And I'll see you in a moment or two. Right, I've removed most of the masking fluid. That took a few minutes, gentle rubbing, and I've just got a little bit left to do. Of course, the marks down here are partly candle wax, so they were always white, that kind of rough texture that you see there. That's the candle wax marks. So up here near the dark pigment of the rock, I'm rubbing gently because I'm rubbing against it but not over it, in case my fingers are a little bit damp, which they are, it's a hot day. I'm just trying to keep the whites white. I think I might pick up some of the pigment. If I notice that happening, then I have to stop and just make sure my finger is clean, which it is. That's good. So it's mostly off now, I think. Rough bits here and there. That's mostly off. Now, that's almost there. But what happens with masking fluid is that it can seem very flat, gives you these white cut out flat shapes. And I just want to do a little bit more painting to encourage some of those marks to become part of the fabric of the painting. So I'm going to put another little layer of marks over the top. And I think down here I'm going to use a warm blue. Use ultramarine with a little bit of the turquoise that was in my palette. I'm just warming it up a little bit. And looking back at the photograph, I'm just going to sweep that over some of these marks and kind of integrate them with another layer of soft undulating turbulence marks. So let's try to seep those in a little bit. Now on the rock itself, or rather on the spray itself, I think just a little bit of tone, very, very light grey or warm grey, ultramarine and a hint of alizarin crimson, giving mauvey, warm mauvey grey. Yeah, even paler. Just to hint at the light and shade on the spray. Give a sense of being three-dimensional. Catching the light in that split second of its existence. Gives it more sense of being a force applied to the rock. And I think I'm going to leave it there.